Not that one. Hang on. Try that. Can you hear now? Can you hear?
Gail, can you hear us?
Yes. When you said yes, now we can.
Okay, and I can't, this clicker is not advancing, so if we can please press the next slide, please. Okay,
Yeah, I'm trying.
if you could just press the button to move to the next slide. Because this
There we go.
clicker is not sending a signal. Super, thank you. So those arguments that I listed have been arguments that advocates have been using since the 1960s. They have not succeeded at actually getting cannabis legalized at scale. These are some arguments that are actually working, kind of branding it as natural, safe, and especially medicinal. Because poll after poll after poll shows that the highest rate of public support for legalization is for the medical use. This creates, let's go to the next slide, please. So this is arguing that this is medicinal, that this is safe, this is natural. These are the things that get it legalized. Behind the scenes, what's driving legalization is the fact that,
yeah, but I know that like down here.
What's driving legalization behind the scenes is that there is a lot of money to be made. Best estimates are between $15 to $30 billion every year are spent just in the United States on acquiring cannabis. Business analysts predict that with effective marketing, that they can grow those sales by double digits annually. And lots of big corporations. I forgot to put in here a little news article that even the Church of England wants to invest money in cannabis these days. And behind this is a more than 6,000% increase in spending on in the industry spending on lobbyists to get legislators to change laws. So that's going on. If your brand image is natural, safe, and medicinal, then this kind of data is going to really kill the party. Nobody's going to change laws and nobody's going to sign up to try it if it's realized that according to surveys of people who have used cannabis, this is an analysis of 12 such surveys, that it has a lot of side effects. Half the people who have used cannabis say at some point in their use they've experienced paranoia, concentration impairments, poor sleep, poor memory, anxiety, hallucinations, and so forth. Not a really awesome looking side effect profile. And there's a lot of energy to try to dispute that bad things could happen. This is actually a direct quote from a lady who is a media relations director for one of those lobbying organizations called the NCIA. Quote, "The bottom line is that there is zero proof that cannabis consumption causes psychosis. It's just scare tactics from people that are opposed to sensible cannabis policy reform." So a lot of attention in public discussion spaces is devoted to the fact that you can't really prove that cannabis causes psychosis because they say people who are prone to psychosis may experience it, but it can't cause it to anybody just naturally. Here's in fact how you prove causation in human studies. You get your active drug and you give it to a group of people that don't have psychosis, and you give a placebo drug to another group of people with the same age, the same gender, the same background. And you don't tell the volunteers or the researchers who got what. It's called double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. That's how you prove causation, and the experiments have been done. Sorry to say, Morgan Fox, it causes psychosis. Not to everybody, but it can. So here's a review article published in Biological Psychiatry 2016, looking at a large number of such studies where they get human volunteers, put them in laboratories, give them either cannabis extracts, or THC, and then do things like the brief psychiatric rating scale or the positive and negative syndrome scale. With great frequency, it is found that giving THC or cannabis extracts causes symptoms of psychosis. That's proof. Want more proof? Look to the FDA. THC is actually a drug that a physician like me can prescribe, and fun fact, I have prescribed it. Because it's a drug that is on the market, it has to go through gold standard clinical tests, in which there's a placebo control group, and from FDA registrational data, between 3% to 10% of people who got THC experienced symptoms of psychosis, causes psychosis. And one thing about those clinical trial data, doses are important. So FDA says 2.5 milligrams is a starting dose. FDA says the maximum dose of THC is 20 milligrams. One joint of modern hybrid strains can get you to the 20 milligram dose easily. And the state of Ohio, in its medical marijuana law, says that a consumer can consume up to 110 milligrams of edible form and 590 milligrams of THC while vaped. So those side effects risks go up when the dose goes up. So Ohio is typical of many, many states. The so-called approved doses are a little high compared to what we think we know about medicine doses. Anyway, that's just some background for why I think this is an important topic, and why I belabor this is because our clients, our young people, let's put it this way. Cannabis works for some people. For some people, it works really well, and it can. Although for some people they experience anxiety, other people experience great anxiety relief or euphoria or a number of very positive emotions. So it really works, and there is, as I said, there is an industry behind trying to get it legalized, and there's a lot of funding behind public relations messages that go out, including for-profit websites like Leafly or High Times, which have nonstop blog articles about why cannabis is good and why people that say it causes psychosis are out of touch fearmongers. So I mean, they're pushing medicinal value and safe natural product, and that's why a whole bunch of our clients are using it and have a difficult time understanding that maybe they shouldn't. So I mean, from the last time that we thought we could look at data from all you guys, it would seem that about half of clients in first programs are using cannabis, and that's in line with modern estimates from other centers showing that between 50 to 60% of people with first episode psychosis are using cannabis. Of those who are using cannabis, estimates are that about 30% of them have a cannabis use disorder that is comorbid with their first episode of psychosis. This is important because, well, as you might guess, if cannabis can cause psychosis in some people, then for people who already have psychosis, cannabis might make things worse. And the data are fairly robust that there might be a handful of people in the world with schizophrenia who use cannabis and have durable, meaningful, lasting benefit from it. Those people are probably a minority, but most of the studies out there are along these lines, that amongst people with first episode psychosis that use cannabis, you see higher rates of medication switching, polypharmacy, which are indicators of medication non-response or poor response, frequent signals for increase in hospitalizations, higher levels of symptoms, lower levels of functional achievements across the board. And we'll probably keep getting more data like this as we acquire more signal. So how can we help our clients to change this behavior? Well, the bad news and the good news. The bad news is that we actually have very few studies that look at systematic approaches in first episode psychosis and say this works better than that. So the formal evidence base is meager. However, of the evidence base that we do have, there's a signal that says that psychoeducation works, motivational interviewing works, and simply peer support works. So if somebody in my program or somebody with a similar experience to mine tells me that, I used to use a lot of pot and I realized that I kept going to the hospital shortly after I would have heavy uses, and then I stopped, and then I started to get a lot better. Coming from somebody who's been there probably is way more impactful than any of us will ever be. But let's take psychoeducation first, and then motivational interviewing. Psychoeducation, this means simply in a therapeutic setting, explaining to people about how things work, and giving them some reasons about that giving them some knowledge so that they can see, they can start to make connections and do some change on their own. Email me, email anybody here. I can send you this. I've shown you this before, but I presented this to try to help you guys provide some education. Very quickly, the top of this 2-page infographic is explains the difference between schizophrenia and psychosis to start with. Then the little chemical structures, so dopamine, glutamate, anandamide, and serotonin, 4 key neurochemicals that are changed in the course of psychosis and schizophrenia, and that are changed in the course of cannabis consumption. So essentially, the biochemical effects of cannabis are recreating what we think we know about the biochemical effects of psychosis. Then on the right panel, which is the second page of the printable handout, we have all sorts of data from animals to say that if you give THC, you have behavior and brainwave and activity changes that look a lot like you see in schizophrenia. You can recreate those changes in people in the laboratory. The graph shows data that the little arrow that sort of curves up, that's a schematic representation of about 10 different studies that look at population data and show that the more cannabis a person uses, the higher the risk of a schizophrenia diagnosis later in life. And then yellow is a warning label that the government of Canada had required to put on their cannabis packaging that says it's associated with an increased rate of psychosis and schizophrenia. So it's a way just to have a discussion about some facts so that people can think about cannabis on their own. Motivational interviewing, I'm going to borrow some slides from Melanie Bennett, who is at the University of Maryland. She presented these slides along with me at a conference recently, and there's some really beautiful stuff in here. As a start, so Melanie advocates, and I would agree with this, that we incorporate cannabis education from the beginning, not expecting that everybody's going to change or even expecting that they'll necessarily listen to us at the beginning, but just to say in a very kind of friendly way, we've noticed in our work that not using cannabis seems to be the best way to help people reduce their symptoms and achieve their goals. Different people do this in different ways, in different timelines. Some stop right away, others cut down and wait and see. Others stop for a while and see how things improve and then decide the next steps. You're the best judge of what will work for you. There are many strategies to help stop using and feel okay when you're ready to stop and so forth. So bringing this into the discussion, I think this is a very nice approach. We're just providing some education. We're not advocating a particular thing, and we're acknowledging that that our clients are in the best position to make decisions. I also will add that I find when talking with people about substance use, an attitude of curiosity, like assuming that you use this drug to your patient because you get something from it. I want to understand how this works for you, what benefits you get, so that if I think about how to help you achieve your best possible life, how could we not lose these benefits if we think about strategies of maybe trying something different that doesn't lose drugs. So Melanie suggests using this at the beginning, continuing it as you go forward. Sometimes when we meet, we check not talking about cannabis every time, but occasionally, sometimes when we meet, we check in about how you're thinking about reducing your use of marijuana. As you know, in this program, our goal is to help you to have a great life. And we noticed that people that stop using cannabis have better success with that. So again, different people have different timelines. And last time we talked, you were thinking so-and-so, and how are you thinking about these days? So it's introduce it early, introduce it friendly, and introduce it and reintroduce it periodically is a great way to go forward. And you'll send these slides, so I'm not going to spend more time reading this text. And that's about, and